how many here today are first-time vestry members, or this is their first Bishop's Day Saturday? Quite a number of hands. That was a warm-up exercise. I'll tell you about in a second. I'm Tom Ager, and I'm privileged to be in front of you this morning, and I want to thank Caroline Black and the Diocese for giving me this opportunity. Caroline asked me last spring whether I wanted to come and do a TED Talk, and I said, sure. It was only after that she asked me, well, what do you want to talk about? That's real trust. I want to indulge myself this morning with you on a topic that's always been of great interest to me, perhaps to you, the implications of life events. Maybe it isn't just me, because if you Google, God is sending messages in life events, you only get 70 million hits. Thank goodness it's not just me. That's what I wanted to talk about. Can I talk about that, Caroline? She said, sounds good to me. I'll see you in October at Redeemer. So here I am. Thank you. Right off the bat, I want to disappoint you by saying that I have no idea what God has planned for you. I have no idea what God has planned for me. But I know that your life is going to be one exciting journey, full of experiences and circumstances, both exciting and challenging. But that's one thing we all have in common, isn't it? Events with great significance that are obvious and apparent to us immediately. And then maybe great experiences and events that become apparent maybe later on. Or some that perhaps I should have paid better attention to, which might have done me some good. A little bit about me. I grew up attending First Presbyterian Church on Peachtree Street in Atlanta, Georgia. I come from a family of athletes. I worked in media, radio, television, and advertising and marketing, my whole adult life, really since high school. And as you probably know, it's almost like being in a military life. You basically spend 2 years here, 2 years there, 2 years there, 2 years there, and you move around a lot. Until I got to Richmond, which reminded me so much of Atlanta when I was growing up, that I chose to put down roots here 30 years ago. So, I live actually in Midlothian. 3 minutes from here. I've been a member of St. Michael's Episcopal Church in Ager since the early 80s. 3 vestry tours, and I just finished out my second posting as senior warden last January. Last Tuesday, Reverend Canon Janae Gotzi began her second year, splitting her time between serving as your diocesan canon for congregational development and as our rector, succeeding my good friend, Reverend Canon Jim Smith, who led us in an interim period in 2012. And bridging both of them, and probably keeping them mostly on the straight and narrow, is Becky Dean, our deacon, an invaluable member of the family. I am proud and honored to know all 3. What I am not, I hold a political science degree. I hold no religion degrees. I am not a theologian. We have a room full of experience in that this morning. I am not going to lay a sermon on you, I promise you. I'm a Christian just like you, struggling to try and figure it all out. And what cards are dealt to me. All right, turning points. Let's have some fun. Here's an exercise. Where were you when? A show of hands. How many remember where they were September 11th, 2012? Everyone. where they were around year 2000. That's a little more general, isn't it? Because we sort of lived with it for 3 or 4 years when the whole world was panicking over this. I'll share with you a story about my brother. I'll tell my brother because he's not here, so he can't finish it. My brother and the Ager women in the family, I always accuse the Ager women of being cheap. I like pragmatic, but they like the word cheap. My brother was always looking for deals. He and his wife wanted to go to down under, to New Zealand and Australia the worst way. So he gets online, looks for airline tickets, and finds this incredible low fare. I don't know if he noticed the fact that it was that night that they was flying. So, but he bought the tickets, and his wife loves him so much that she trusts him. It was, as he described it, him, the crew, and the airplane flying over the Pacific Ocean, wondering, well, do the lights go out in about 5 minutes, and we basically are lost at sea. He's still here. How about this next one? How many people remember where they were when the USA hockey team won the gold medal in 1980? I was actually in Lake Placid. Regrettably, I couldn't get hockey tickets. In fact, until the semifinals for the Soviets, really it wasn't a very hot ticket to get because we weren't expected to do anything. How about August of 1977? Do you remember where you were then? A lot of people say that's the day when the music died. Here's a big one. Fewer and fewer hands are going up. I was in 4th grade at the time, and I remember the principal called our teacher out of the room to go out. She goes out, and all of a sudden she comes back in about 15 minutes, welling up and pushing a TV in. And we basically watched television the rest of the afternoon. Okay, here's one. Who knows what that is? August of 1957. I am so relieved that Jim Smith and I aren't the only hands who are Sputnik. For those fortunate enough to not raise their hand at that point, Sputnik was the first satellite that was put in orbit by, heaven forbid, the Soviet Union. Has anybody seen the movie The Right Stuff? Yeah. If you haven't, you ought to rent it. There's a great scene in there where you have all of our American officials, you've got some science officials, rocket experts, and Lyndon Johnson in this room, and they're all panicked. This is not supposed to happen. The Soviets are not supposed to be beating us to anything, especially putting a satellite. And what are we going to do about it? Well, I thought it was a seminal moment for America, because guess what we did? We rolled up our sleeves and got to work, didn't we? Those are just some of the major events which left an indelible footprint in our lives. But how about the events in our own life? Those events that we don't necessarily share with the rest of humanity, the rest of the world, the rest of history, but those that impact us in particular. Those events that we recall, maybe immediately when it happens or later on upon reflection. Think about the implications for you and the course setting for your life. I hope if we have a few minutes at the end during the Q&A session, maybe some of you may recall an event that you'd be willing to share with us. That event and what that meant to you. I'll start, and this is a true confession. This is definitely a story that you file under what happens, and just how stupid a teenage boy could be. I'll take you back to November of 1972. I was a freshman southern North Carolina. So it's a long drive from Atlanta. And I was driving up. I was driving a friend of mine who was also there, a kid I grew up with, back to campus. Yeah, I knew he was one of the biggest marijuana dealers on campus. And I'm driving the whole time, watching him basically. He went down to Atlanta and loaded up his inventory, as you might say, and he was getting ready. And I was getting tired. It was close to midnight. We were about there. We were in Rockingham County, North Carolina, which is about 30 miles from Lawrenceburg, North Carolina, where our destination was. And I was tired, so he was driving. And as they say, he could smell the barn from there. And he was blowing through Rockingham, North Carolina. So guess what? We get blown. Understand that beer cans, and there's probably, a year's worth of marijuana in my car. And this guy. I go to fortunately at that time you could get out of your car and go to the police. They won't let you do that now, but at that time you could. So I basically crawled over and went out to the driver, went to the cop, license, registration, yada yada yada, all that stuff. And he figured out pretty quickly we were a couple of college kids from St. Andrews, and so we thought he had something here. So he said, "Let's go to the courthouse. Follow me." So we're following this policeman through the downtown Rockingham, which isn't that big, to the courthouse. And we're within a few blocks of it, when lo and behold, an old truck comes out of a side street, nearly hits the cop. I'm not kidding you. This really happened. I'm not making this up. Nearly hits the cop. The cop hits it. Basically steps on it, goes over, pulls the guy over, gets out of the car, goes over the truck, opens the truck door, and this gentleman falls out onto the pavement. He is that drunk. The cop has a dilemma. Signals me over. He goes, "Son, I got to get this guy in the tank now. You guys slow it down and get to campus now." I said, "Yes, sir." I think about that night a lot. What if I reached that intersection 10 seconds sooner? What if I got there 10 seconds after? What would have been my fate? Would I be standing here talking to you today and things just slightly been different that night? Interesting question, isn't it? Is it blind luck on my part? Now that evidence is positive for me, but we're also not immune from our walk through the valley, are we? Health and family crises, whatever it may be, despite our best efforts, those things can enter our lives, can't they? Failing at something very important to us will leave us with an indelible mark in our psyches. Why did this happen? I'm a good person. I'm doing the right things here. This just isn't fair. Where is God in all this? Margaret Mitchell once said, "I was never one to patiently pick up broken fragments and glue them together again and tell myself that the mended whole was as good as new. What is broken is broken. And I'd rather remember it as it was at its best than mend it and see the broken places as long as broken." Here's another quote. "It's toughest to forgive ourselves, so it's probably best to start with other people. It's almost like peeling an onion. Layer by layer, forgiving others, you really do get to the point where you can forgive yourself." Patty Duke. If you don't know who Patty Duke is, ask me or your parents. But events can also bring renewing possibilities, can't they? understand in 1972, of course, I was 19 years old. I was a teenage boy that age, no. But I do now. It's critically important to be open to not only opportunities, no matter the gift wrapping, but the lessons in that. The real gifts that God bestows through our life experiences. Hopefully, I am listening. I hope I'm self-aware, not self-focused, not self-absorbed. I hope that I'm faithful enough to accept and interpret God's interventions and be thankful for those gifts. That could be the key to the quality of the compass heading that God is helping me set, don't you think? Everybody's probably heard of Yogi Berra, and everybody probably has a favorite Yogi Berra quote. Here's a good one. When you come to a fork in the road,